Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friday Apocryphal Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything Friday Apocryphal and podcast. And boy, do we have a show for you today. Today we are covering 1 Maccabees 12 through 13.
Bam.
That was a lot better than Sunday.
That was the best. Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was great. Fantastic.
So much better.
So,
I have the Anchor Bible version of 1 Maccabees, the new translation with introduction and commentary by Jonathan A. Goldstein.
we also have this commentary. That's Erdman's commentary on the Bible.
We also have the NIV.
The New Interpreter's Bible Commentary, Volume 6.
Which includes 1 Maccabees,
And
among many others.
Yeah, definitely. Before we hop into the reading today, I hope everyone is, surviving this this pandemic, and there's a very nice repercussion to this pandemic, silver lining, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the fact that we, considering recent events of having religious services stopped and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Considering those recent events, we are now the most continuous?
I mean, we're the most consistent.
Most consistent Bible study in the world now.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, that's assuming. Oh no, I have corona. That's assuming that.
Cough that way.
Okay, I will. Sorry, Reuben. That's assuming that people have actually stopped their studies. I don't know if people are doing stuff on Google Hangout or Zoom meetings or stuff like that.
But I don't know. I don't know of many other Bible study live shows on YouTube, really.
Me neither. I'm sure there are some. I just don't know of them.
We should look into it. We should see if we can get some of them on here.
That would be interesting. But you know what? We're 20 episodes into this show, and we're 134 episodes into Atheist Sunday School.
Yes.
And I think we only missed 1 week of that.
Maybe.
Yeah, when we tried to get Jim Majors on.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was
And
sick.
you
had a thing, and he didn't make
You
it.
were out of town.
Yeah.
And I also wasn't great. Everyone was sick.
Yeah.
It was the 1 week no one could do anything. It would have been depressing. I would have been like, hey, guys, I am also sick, and so is everyone else. Sunday school, yeah.
Yeah. But how about we hop into the readings? I do have a bit of commentary to add on to where we're at now that I didn't cover last week because the section covered both the end of chapter 11 and the beginning. Well, not even the beginning, but like the middle of chapter 12. So I just want to add in a few things for context.
All right.
So, Erdman's notes, this is on 11:60 through 74 and 12:24 through 38. These two sections clearly belong together. 1174 is continued in 1224, but the author has inserted between these two halves a curious account of alliances with Rome and Sparta, to which we will return. There's a good bit of stuff there. And then from the NIB commentary, serious questions, and this is for chapter 12. Serious questions have been raised about the authenticity of the Spartan correspondence, though some scholars maintain that it is genuine. In Judas's time, the Seleucid kingdom was united under Demetrius I, while during Jonathan's career, Demetrius II and Antiochus VI were fighting for the throne. Judas operated within Judea, and these are the difference in circumstances for Jonathan and Judas, by the way. Where was I? Right. Judas operated within Judea, while Jonathan had a well-equipped army traversing the province of Trans-Euphrates. Judas was a rebel from the Seleucid king. Jonathan was his kinsman, and Simon one of his governors. Simon, of course, someone we're going to talk about today. Jonathan is depicted as a respected member of the club, meeting with kings and forming alliances with them. The author of 1 Maccabees wants to put Jonathan on the world stage and thus heighten the importance of Jonathan and the Jewish nation.
All right.
Yeah, so that's just the importance on the differences between the Judas narrative and the Jonathan one.
Well, there's a note from the previous chapter which says just 11 verses 60 through 74. Here and in 12:1 through 38, our author or his source may have seen the acts of Jonathan and Simon as fulfilling prophecies of Zechariah, victory through being rescued by God, the intimidation of the Greeks and of Philistine Gaza and Ascalon, the extension of the territory under the control of the Lord's people to Hamath and Damascus, indeed as far as the Euphrates, the diminution of Phoenician Tyre.
Why not Tyre? Yeah.
And
I think
Sidon.
it's been Tyre for a while, we've agreed.
Yeah, by the capture of Phoenician Joppa, and so on and so on. Basically, this is some Zechariah prophecy that may be being fulfilled in
Right.
quotes, right? So it says, like the story of the embassy to Rome, no one would have missed verses 1 through 23 had they been omitted. Our author probably places them here because, in fact, the victory prompted Jonathan to send the embassy. See further on verse 1.
Yes. So one of the things here, it seems unlikely that he would have returned to Jerusalem only to set out immediately, and that's in verse 25 of chapter 12, only to set out immediately for Syria within what appears to be the same season, though the author gives no dates. This must be an editorial arrangement to allow for the intervening diplomatic engagement with Rome and Sparta, also undated.
So this Zechariah prophecy apparently comes from Zechariah 9.
Zechariah 9. Well, you know what? We will get to that in Atheist Sunday School.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Someday. But why don't I hop into this chapter 12.
Sure.
Perceiving that time was working in his favor, Jonathan appointed ambassadors and sent them to Rome to confirm and renew the ties of friendship with the Romans. You know, we have obviously this friends of the king.
Yeah. And the Romans are, of course, gaining a foothold in the region. They are gaining power, but at this point in time, they are friends with the Jews. So
Yeah, you can have up to 2 brooches if you're super friends.
Yeah. He also sent letters to the same effect to Sparta and to other places. The ambassadors journeyed to Rome. On being admitted to the Senate House, they said, "The high priest Jonathan and the nation of the Jews have sent us to renew the ties of friendship and alliance with you as before." The Romans gave them letters to the authorities in each place containing instructions to see to it that the ambassadors returned safely to the land of Judah.
So what verse did you just finish?
I just finished verse 4.
Okay, great. So we got a good amount of stuff to talk about here.
Yes.
So the brevity of the description of the Roman mission has led some scholars to suggest that it is simply a doublet of Simon's later embassy, and that's in chapter 15, which we will get to next time. To continue here, it should also be considered in the light of the creative history, whereby many nations sought to enhance their prestige by connecting their heroes to the mythical heroes of Greece. So this is actually super interesting. I was telling Chris about this the other day. Within the Jewish tradition, for example, Cleodemus Malchus has the sons of Abraham accompany Heracles to Africa. And Tacitus reports that the name Jew derives from Mount Ida in Crete, thus forging a Cretan origin for the Jews.
Yeah, that's
How interesting is that?
Super interesting.
That is interesting.
We have this whole time had no clue where they came from originally.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, that's not really the
It's
issue.
not the biblical account.
I mean, and yeah,
course.
non-biblical account, I suppose.
But
This was a way to, basically just integrate with the changing milieu. And for a citation of the first example, there's Josephus in Antiquities of the Jews, and then obviously Tacitus in his histories. So that's that. But we can continue. I just thought that was super interesting. Maybe it's something we can check out later.
all right. Here is the text of the letter which Jonathan wrote to the Spartans. The high priest Jonathan and the council of elders of the nation and the priests of the rest of the people of the Jews to their brothers the Spartans, greeting. Long ago, a letter was sent to our high priest Onias from Arius.
So there's a good amount of stuff here. So for the introduction that you had just read for the letter, the Jewish Senate was mentioned in a letter of Antiochus III, but precisely what its membership was is unknown. Most probably it was composed of priests and leading members of the local aristocracy. But on this whole section in general, Erdman's notes that this section is clearly intruded into its present context in the author's usual way and connects with 14, 16 through 24, and 15, 15 through 24. The author intertwines Maccabean dealings with Rome and Sparta, creating some confusion for the historian. Thus, in 12, 1 through 4, the author sketches Jonathan's mission to Rome to renew the friendship and alliance made in 161 BCE. But in 12.2 adds a note mentioning sending letters to the same effect to the Spartans and others. Curiously, it is only in the letter to the Spartans that the delegates to Rome are named. This letter is surely a diplomatic fiction concocted by the author of First Maccabees. Its description of constant prayer for the Spartans is insincere, and I can't wait to get through the letter and just like get the tone of it. And its reference to Jewish sufferings without any sign of understanding of recent Spartan difficulties in the Achaean War, both tactless and inappropriate. The reference to sending diplomats to Rome, quote, and also to you, is equally tactless. So, yeah, there's that. And you also mentioned Onias and Arius, right?
Yeah, well, I'll get into Arius.
Sure.
Arius, who was then your king, saying that you are our kin, as in the subjoined text. Onias received your emissary with honor and accepted the letter, in which alliance and friendship were mentioned. That's essentially all they say about Onias and Arius.
So there's a lot of, maybe not debate, but there's a lot of conversation around who these are supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So from Erdman's, at the heart of this letter lies a reference to a letter sent in time past from the Spartan king Arius to the Jewish high priest Onias. The author then appends a copy of this letter. A slightly extended version of it appears in Josephus's Antiquities of the Jews, which may suggest that it was known independently to Josephus and therefore perhaps derived from a source used by both First Maccabees and Josephus. However, this letter also has its problems. If King Arius is Arius the First, 309 to 265 BC, Onias must be Onias the First, 300 BC, or perhaps Onias the Second. Arius the First might possibly have been able to speculate about Jewish Spartan kinship from Herodotus, and actually, that was the end of the note there.
Well, good job.
Yeah, thanks. Although there is one that might help us a little bit more in this, even though it's actually shorter. The Greek manuscripts actually give the name of the Spartan king as Darius.
Mm-hmm.
The king referred to is probably Arius the First, rather than Arius the Second, who died as a child. Onias is probably the Jewish high priest Onias the First. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So just to be clear on who we're talking about.
there is a bit here. When I finish verse 23, I'm going to read quite a bit of commentary.
Sure, yeah.
And I'll cover some Onias stuff, but apparently there is dependent stuff in the Onias and Arius stuff that is in the commentary through 23. So
Okay.
I'll continue. Now, although we are not in need of ties of alliance and friendship, since we have as our source of courage the holy books in our possession, we venture to send a message to renew our ties of brothership and friendship with you in order that we may not become estranged from you. Indeed, many years have passed since you sent us your message. Throughout the years, we have unfailingly made mention of you on our festivals and on the other appropriate occasions in connection with the sacrifices we offer, as well as in our prayers, inasmuch as it is right and proper thus to make mention of brothers. We rejoice over your eminence, as for us, many troubles and many wars have beset us, as the kings in our vicinity waged war upon us. Now, we did not wish to bother you or our other allies and friends with these wars, for we have the help of heaven coming to our aid, so that we have been saved from our enemies and our enemies have been brought low. Accordingly, we have appointed Numenius, son of Antiochus, and Antipater, son of Jason, and have sent them as ambassadors to Rome to renew our previous ties of friendship and alliance with the Romans. We have ordered them to go to you, too, and greet you and deliver to you our letter concerning the renewal of our ties of brotherhood. Please be so good as to send us a reply to our proposals. Here is the text of the letter which they sent. To Onias, Arius, king of the Spartans, greeting. In a work concerning the Spartans and the Jews, there is a statement that they are brothers and that they are descended from Abraham. Now that we have learned this, please be so good as to write us how you are. We are ready to write and reply to you. Your cattle and property are ours, and ours are yours. We have ordered that you be given a full report on these matters.
So, in the letter, Arius alludes to a writing that suggests that the Spartans and the Jews are brothers and are of the family of Abraham. That was verse 21. Scholars would dearly love to have the writing which Arius refers. It is interesting that the Greek historian Herodotus states that the progenitors of the Spartan royal house came from Egypt, and Hecataeus of Abdera holds that the Greek hero Danos, not Thanos, Danos, whose descendants populated the Peloponnese, and Cadmos, the founder of Thebes, left Egypt when Moses led the Israelites out. And furthermore, it may be a concretely phrased formula to express, of course, the whole thing that you said at the end there, may be a concretely phrased formula to express kinship and friendship through the fact that both the parties hold something in common, even though neither would use the other's possessions without consent.
All right. Well, there's quite a bit that Goldstein says about this letter and the whole ordeal. So let me get into it.
Well, before you get into that, just one note from Erdman's.
All right.
Such property arrangements seem most unlikely between Spartans and Jews, but they might be accepted as an understood fiction.
Okay. The letter to the Spartans shows how Jonathan and his diplomatic staff were ready and able to use for their own benefit the established methods of the Hellenistic world, as we learned from earlier and later documents. Rome at the time stood as the unrivaled power, but even for her friends, Rome might not intervene unless Roman interests were directly involved. The Romans also had by now several times turned hostile to erstwhile beneficiaries, and the dynasty beneficiaries whose loyalty they found reason to question as Rhodes, the Achaean League, and the dynasty of Pergamum had found to their sorrow. Few, indeed, at this time were the political units who enjoyed unclouded Roman favor. See a bunch of sources. But it goes on to say, many of the peculiarities of the letter to the Spartans became understandable when compared with the procedures used earlier by the Greek city of Lampsakos. When their city on the eastern shore of the Hellespont was threatened by the ambitions of Antiochus III in 197 and 196, the people of Lampsakos sought to cope with the situation by sending Hegesias on a mission first to the Roman naval commander in Greek waters, Lucius Quinticus Flamininus,
What a great
Wow.
name.
then to distant Massalia, and finally to Rome. To Flamininus, Hegesias' embassy pleaded that the people of Lampsakos were kin and friends of the Romans and therefore should receive Roman protection, and also because the people of Lampsakos were brothers of the staunch friends and allies of the Romans, the people of Massalia. The embassy received favorable replies from Flamininus, and the news, on reaching Lampsakos, raised the courage of the people. After their meeting with Flamininus, the embassy took the long journey to Massalia, where they pleaded for and got the dispatch of a Massaliote embassy to support their cause before the Roman Senate. At Rome, the Massaliotes reminded the Senate of their long friendship and alliance with the Romans and pleaded for their brothers, the people of Lampsakos. Thereupon, Hegesias and his embassy themselves pleaded the cause of Lampsakos, asking that the Senate look to the interests of Lampsakos as well to those of Rome's other close friends, because of the ties of kinship, because of the existing kindly sentiments at Lampsakos towards Rome, and because Lampsakos' cause had the backing of the Massalioites. The results were sufficiently favorable for Lampsakos that the people there set up the inscription honoring Hegesias, from which we derive our knowledge of the whole affair, to be corrupted by Morris Holliu, later, I guess. And so he talks about these Lampsakos people, and then he says, at the time of the embassy sent by Jonathan in the reign of Antiochus the Sixth, Sparta was the outstanding example of how the favor of the Romans could bring success. The Achaean League had attacked and menaced Sparta in 148 and 147, and in 146 had again gone to war against her. Quickly, Rome came to Sparta's rescue with diplomatic moves in 147, and with her armies in 146, utterly crushing and dissolving the Achaean League. Jonathan and his staff understood the threats posed to them by the hostile Demetrius II and the unreliable Diodotus Tryphon. As well as was done in the time of Judas, they had recourse to Rome, but they now understood the difficulties of retaining Roman support. Unlike the Greeks of Lampsakos, Jonathan and his staff found no device for claiming kinship to Rome, though they may have quoted Jewish prophecies of Roman greatness to impress the Senate. Like the people of Lampsakos, however, the Jewish diplomats now sought to have for the future the good offices of a close friend of the Romans, a friend to whom they themselves could claim ties of kinship. Where Massalia served that purpose for Lampsakos, Sparta might serve Jonathan and the Jews. Greek practice required the group claiming kinship or pious-friendly relations to furnish proof if the matter in question was not common knowledge. Hence, Jonathan and his staff were made use of the letter of Arius and composed a letter to accompany it. And going on to the bit about Arius, there's a lot, so forgive me if it seems rambly.
I mean, we can continue the reading. I think we covered up a little bit about Arius. We at least know which one he was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, then let's just go forward from here.
Sure.
Word came to Jonathan that Demetrius's commanders had returned with a larger force than before to wage war on him. He set out from Jerusalem and confronted them in the territory of Amathetus, giving them no opportunity to invade his own territory. He sent spies into the enemy camp. They returned to him with the report that the enemy was preparing to attack them that night. At sunset, Jonathan ordered his men to be on the alert and to keep their arms at hand so as to be ready for battle throughout the night. He sent out advance patrols to guard the perimeter of the camp. When the enemy learned that Jonathan and his men were ready for battle, they were struck with terror and their courage melted. They withdrew after leaving fires burning in their camp. Jonathan and his men did not realize what had happened until morning, for they saw the campfires burning. When Jonathan did pursue after them, they failed to overtake them, for they had crossed the Eleutheros River. Thereupon,
since he had not gone beyond the Eleutheros River earlier, since Simon's rule was over the ladder of Tyre, also south of the Eleutheros, and since the enemy is said to flee across the Eleutheros River, the reader should therefore see the confrontation as having taken place at the southern border of the region of Hamath, near the traditional northern limit of Israel's territory.
yeah, it says here,
And of course, Israel's territory is talked about so much. Not in this book, but Joshua especially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says the site of the confrontation must have been somewhere near the Eleutheros River. Had our author known that it was at Lebo Hamath, the well-known border point of the Promised Land, he surely would have said so. Demetrius's troops must have come from the coastal strip, still loyal to that king.
So is it possible that there was an issue with that region? Like it just wasn't used as much or wasn't as popular?
Maybe there was some superstition around it.
Maybe. Yeah.
We'll have to look into it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because something that was a border for Israel, that the person
and
that
vital probably for some trading routes with Israel.
Maybe I'm not.
I mean, it
sure.
shares a border with the country.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but the issue is that with someone, the author of this book is well versed in the Torah, Hebrew Bible kind of stuff. Because we mentioned Zechariah earlier in the show. There are clear references to the Deuteronomistic history as well. So you would think that they would use Hamath, but they don't. So, yeah, that's interesting.
Thereupon, Jonathan turned aside against the Arabs called Zabadeans.
So, I have a little bit about that.
Wait. Defeating them and taking their spoils.
Thank you. The Zabadeans lived about 30 miles northwest of Damascus. Perhaps there is a connection between these people and the Zabdiel who murdered Alexander Balas.
The Zabadeans give their name to modern Zabdani, northwest of Damascus. Josephus, or the scribe who wrote his copy of First Maccabees, knew nothing of the Zabadeans and wrongly read Nabateans. The Nabateans were not situated in the area between the Eleutheros and Damascus. Josephus adds that Jonathan sold his captives and spoils from the Arabs at Damascus. Okay.
Right, let's continue.
On withdrawing from there, he marched to Damascus and made a tour of his entire province. Meanwhile, Simon marched out and made a tour of something, there's dots, as far as Ascalon, including the neighboring strongholds.
What verse is that?
That is verse 33.
Okay.
On verse 33, it says, there appears to be something missing after made a tour of, a noun in the accusative cause to go with kaita plesion Archiromata, literally, and the neighboring strongholds. The noun was probably something like his territory. Josephus's paraphrase has Simon went through all Judea and Palestine as far as Ascalon and secured all the fortresses. Although Ascalon maintained correct and peaceful relations with the Hasmoneans, there was probably good reasons for a demonstration in force. Though Jonathan had captured Joppa, clearly it was not under occupation when Simon took action.
Yeah, so the one note here on this is while Jonathan controls the north, Simon makes sure the southern coastal area remains quiet.
Simon turned against Joppa and captured it because he had heard that there was a plot to turn over their fortress to Demetrius's men. Simon stationed a garrison there to keep watch over the city. On returning, Jonathan convoked the elders of the people and in consultation with them decided to build fortresses in Judea and to increase the height of the walls of Jerusalem and to erect a high wall between the Acra and the city as to shut it off from the city and isolate it so that the occupants could neither buy nor sell. So about this, Jonathan and Simon may have been acting here to fulfill prophecies of Zechariah. The elders are surely the members of the Council of Elders. Again, Jonathan tries to starve out the occupants of the Acra. Demetrius II had treated the men of the Acra as his own garrison and protected them from Jonathan. Therefore, Jonathan, as a commander for Antiochus VI, was free to besiege the citadel. And it says, the people gathered to fortify the city. Part of the wall of the eastern valley collapsed, so he replaced it by the structure called Chafenatha.
Yeah, so here's the thing is we don't really know what that is. But
it's a Chafenatha.
Oh, thanks, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, the Chafenatha appears to be derived from the Aramaic root meaning hunger. In the absence of further information, speculation on why structure it was so named is futile.
Yeah, exactly. It says that the name Chafenatha is unexplained, but some people actually think that it was an extra room. That it was the second room. I think. I don't actually have that noted, which sucks. I should have had that noted. But I do remember reading that some people think it was the second room of a temple or something like that. That it was referenced
used for fasting.
I have no idea.
There are rooms for fasting at the entrance to temples because it's part of that ritual for purification, remember?
No,
with the leprosy stuff where you're not...
Oh yeah, the leprosy thing. That was
That's different rooms.
Yeah.
Those
Right.
are like quarantine rooms.
Yeah.
Right, but they'd be at the entrance to the temple. I remember...
I forget where they were.
I
but
kind of remember.
I remember they were like dark closets pretty much.
they're dark closets.
Simon rebuilt Adida in the Shephelah and fortified it, providing it with gates and bars. Then Tryphon plotted to become king of Asia and assumed the diadem by doing violence to King Antiochus.
So the last thing you said, the Eastern Valley referred to is the Kidron Valley, which of course, if you remember our
Atheist Sunday School.
Yes, if you remember Atheist Sunday School and our discussions on Second Kings especially, at the end there with Josiah's reign when he's destroying all of the idols, he is throwing the remains into the Kidron River. Yeah.
It was definitely written.
Yes. Apprehensive lest Jonathan should fight to prevent him, he sought a way to capture Jonathan and slay him. Accordingly, he set out and marched to Beth Shan. Jonathan marched out to meet him with 40,000 picked men ready for battle and came to Beth Shan. On seeing that Jonathan had come with a large force, Tryphon shrank from doing him violence.
Yeah, of course, this is another textual play on words that we've seen before. To meet him, of course, could have a good or a bad connotation.
Yes.
Yeah.
it could mean to murder.
Yeah.
Okay. He received him with honor and introduced him to all his friends, giving him gifts and ordering his friends and his soldiers to obey Jonathan as they would himself. He said to Jonathan, "Why did you weary all these people when we are not at war? Now then, let them go home. Pick yourself a few men to accompany you and come with me to Ptolemais, where I shall turn the city over to you as well as the other strongholds and the rest of the troops and all the officials, and then I shall march back home. Indeed, that is the purpose of my coming."
Jonathan, I got a bridge to sell you.
Was Tryphon able to deceive Jonathan because Jonathan expected a fulfillment of Isaiah 60 and saw in Tryphon's behavior and remarks a fulfillment of Isaiah 60, verse 3, 4a, and 5?
The commentary is somewhere else. It's over on the table over there, but whatever. We're not going to comment on Isaiah, so
Yeah,
we're going to do that later.
we'll do it later.
By the way, was that the end of the chapter?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, all right then.
Jonathan, trusting him, did as he suggested. He dismissed his troops who went home to the land of Judah. He still had with him 3,000 men. Of these, he dropped 2,000 off in Galilee, so that his escort numbered 1,000. However, as soon as Jonathan entered Ptolemais, the citizens of Ptolemais closed their gates, seized him, and put all who had entered with him to the sword. Then Tryphon sent infantry and cavalry into Galilee and came into the great plain to slay all Jonathan's men. The men, however, came to the conclusion that he had been captured and slain with his entire escort. They put heart into one another as they rallied and marched ready for battle. Their pursuers, perceiving that they were ready to fight to the death, turned back. As a result, the Jewish soldiers all returned safe to the land of Judah. There, as they mourned for Jonathan and his escort, they were struck with great fear. Indeed, while all Israel was in deep mourning, all the neighboring Gentiles plotted to destroy them, thinking, "They are leaderless and helpless. Now, therefore, let us wage war upon them and wipe out the memory of them from the human race."
And obviously Jonathan isn't even dead at this point.
Right.
But they think he
And
is.
So he's building up all these prophecies that he's trying to fulfill.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, when he dies, this figure that they've been building up over time is no longer capable of fulfilling those prophecies. And that
Is ironic.
is the end of chapter 12. If you're enjoying the stream so far, I want you to give us a like, and I want you to share it with all your friends, family, neighbors, estranged ex-wives, kids,
Estranged kids.
estranged
Strange
kids,
children. No.
strange kids.
Well, and thanks for the continued support. Please let everybody know that we're somehow capable of live streaming due to the fact that none of us leave our homes anyways.
And I mean, send this especially to all the people that are quarantined and quarantining themselves.
Yes.
Stay at home.
Send them to your coronavirus riddled friends. All right, let's continue, shall we?
Yep.
Chapter 13. The news reached Simon that Tryphon had assembled a large army, intending to invade the land of Judah and wipe it out. Perceiving the territory and dismay of the people, he went to Jerusalem and called a meeting of the people. He proceeded to encourage them, telling them, "You know all that I and my brothers and my family have done for the sake of our laws and our sanctuary. You know the wars and the troubles we have faced. All my brothers gave up their lives for no other cause than for Israel. And only I am left." So obviously, he's the only brother left.
Yes. Simon exhorts the people by recalling the past and making that as the basis for his future actions, as Mattathias had recalled the deeds of the ancestors in times of distress. See Speeches of Mattathias 2:19 through 22, and Judas 3:58 through 60. The reasoning behind verse 5, have you finished verse 5?
No, I'm about to get to verse 5. Now far be it from me to spare my own life in any time of trouble. I am not worth more than my brothers. That's verse 5.
The reasoning behind verse 5 seems to assume the Deuteronomic theory that death is punishment for a sin. But if such good men as his father and brother died, then it must not have been because of their sin. Times of distress had come upon Israel, and no one could be good enough to escape death.
Yeah, we've come across this kind of stuff a lot where they have one theology, but then in the face of their theology being wrong, they just say it's something else.
Mhm.
And they also add that to their theology.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a weird thing about their idea of good in this sense. It's a sense of worth, but that worth, which is measured, obviously, specifically against ideals, can go up and down. Like, you need to be good enough at the time. You know? It seems like God goes through phases in this or something.
Sure, yeah.
There's also a little bit here on the dating.
Okay, fantastic.
Or not the dating of the text, but the when
dates that this is
taking
happening.
place. Yes.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea to cover.
No date has been given since the ascension of Demetrius II in the year 167, probably because the author has nothing to record from the official Syrian archives for this period. The next date given is the removal of the Gentile yoke 3 years later in year 170. The events detailed in 1 Maccabees 11:20 through 13:40 presumably belong between these two dates.
Neat.
Yes. So
Yeah.
Simon would take over in summer or autumn 143 BC, which for an era beginning autumn 312 or spring 311 BC would be in year 169.
Fantastic. Now we know. Rather, I shall take vengeance for my nation and our sanctuary and for your wives and children, now that all the Gentiles in their hatred have assembled to wipe us out. So, war is coming. He so revived the spirit of the people as soon as they had heard these words that they shouted in answer, "You are our chief. In the place of your brothers Judas and Jonathan, fight our war, and we shall perform all your commands." Yeah, I guess they're ready. They're ready for Simon here.
Yeah. Tell me when you get to the beginning of verse 12.
Okay. Thereupon he assembled all the warriors and made haste to complete the walls of Jerusalem and strengthen the fortifications around her. He sent Jonathan, son of Absalom, with a considerable force to Joppa. And of course, that's probably not the right pronunciation, but whatever, where he expelled the inhabitants and occupied the town. And I'm about to get into verse 12.
All right. So this section is bounded by Trypho's entering and leaving the land, which happens in verse 24. For the first time, we learn that Jonathan is still alive, and that drama arises as to what his fate will be.
Well, we will see what his fate will be, huh?
Yeah, we'll see.
Drama. Don't you just love it? Don't you love a good drama?
Yeah.
No, I don't. Tryphon set out from Ptolemais with a large force intending to invade the land of Judah. With him, he took his prisoner Jonathan. Simon thereupon posted himself at Adida, overlooking the plain. When Tryphon received the news that Simon had taken the place of his brother Jonathan, and that he was ready to join battle with him, he sent envoys to Simon with the message: "Because of money which your brother Jonathan owed the royal treasury in connection with his official capacities, we are now holding him under arrest." Obviously just trying to justify his capture there.
Well, they're also signaling that they didn't kill him.
Yeah, exactly. But of course, they were just, it was a strategic move. This is just kind of like, well, he didn't pay us. So that's why we have him.
And tax. That's how we get him.
So this invasion from Ptolemaeus probably occurred in autumn 143 BC. So autumn 143 is when this happens.
Accordingly, send now 100 talents of silver and 2 of his sons as hostages, so that upon being released he will not rebel against us, and we shall release him. So give us his sons. We don't know how old they are, but give us his sons, and then we give him back to you.
Okay.
But because
you give us 3 guys, and we'll give you 1. And then if you want those 3 guys, you give us 9 guys.
But you would think that he would want to continue to rebel because now they have his sons.
It says, Trypho also asked for 2 of Jonathan's sons as hostages. Hostage taking was a typical tactic. Antiochus IV had been a hostage in Rome, and Bacchides and Jonathan had taken hostages also. This is the first time we know that Jonathan was married.
Though Simon understood that there was treachery in their proposal, that's not a thing, in their proposal, he sent an order to get the money and the children. In his mind was the fear of deep animosity toward him among the people. Should they come to say that it was because I did not deliver the money and the children to Tryphon that Jonathan perished, I think they would understand.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Give him money and children. No, just you have your military there.
Yeah. Though Simon delivered the children and the 100 talents, Tryphon cheated him and refused to release Jonathan.
Hey, more hostages, thanks.
Simon.
And money? Dang,
You know-
I win. We're not releasing him.
They chose Simon. They were very happy about Simon. Not looking great so far. Well, maybe he can make up for this. We'll see.
Maybe.
Thereupon, Tryphon moved to take over the country and wipe it out. They took a roundabout route by the road to Adora, but Simon and his army countered his every turn at every point along his line of march.
So about these children, we do not know how old the 2 boys were, nor are we told what subsequently happened to them. Perhaps Trypho killed them when he killed Jonathan.
Maybe.
As expected, Trypho breaks his word, just as Bacchides and Demetrius II had done before him.
This is a lot of unnecessary trusting nature with these guys, and then betrayal. This is how many times is these past readings?
Well, the whole point is that the Seleucids, right? Yeah, they can't be trusted. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, these are just accounts of times in which they were betrayed, perhaps.
Yeah, but
in
this
some
is
regard.
Yeah, and this is all specifically related to one family. Either way. Meanwhile, the men of the Acra kept sending envoys to Tryphon to urge him to act quickly and come to them by way of the desert and send them provisions. Tryphon did prepare all his cavalry to make the trip. But on that night, there was a very heavy snowfall, so that the snow prevented him from going. He then withdrew and marched into the Galatidas. Is there any note on the Galatidas?
Also, I'd like to note something. How often is snow brought up?
It hasn't been brought up yet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hot damn.
The snowfall
Gilead.
suggests winter, so given the date in 1341, this must have taken place during the winter of 143/42 BCE.
Right, yeah. Perhaps by marching on through the Galatidas, which is Gilead, instead of turning back through Idumea, Tryphon avoided the ignominy of retreat and encouraged the Gentiles of Transjordan to resist Simon. Yeah, so that's Gilead. Got it. As he came near Baskama, he put Jonathan to death, and Jonathan was buried there. Then, well, now he just doesn't have, well, I guess he still does have leverage, right? If he still has the kids. But if he killed those, then now he has no leverage.
You
It's
can just say
also
he has them.
noteworthy. Jonathan, unlike Judas and Simon, receives no eulogy from First Maccabees, though he had ruled in various capacities for some 18 years.
That's impressive. Right, so Jonathan just got killed. Then Tryphon turned and went back to his own land. Simon sent men to take up the bones of his brother Jonathan and buried him at Modin, the town of his ancestors. All Israel observed deep mourning for him and were plunged into grief for many days. Over the tomb of his father and his brothers, Simon constructed a monument impressive for its height, built of hewn stone on both its fronts and rear sides.
So Eusebius of
Caesarea.
Kais,
Wait, is it not Caesarea?
it could be Caesarea, it could be Caesarea.
No, it's Caesarea.
Okay, Caesarea. In his Onomasticon, under the entry for Modane of the early 4th century CE, wrote that it was still standing in his time. It has not survived, and its description in First Maccabees is not detailed enough so that one can reconstruct it.
Yeah, it's sad. He set up 7 pyramids, one in front of the other, for his father, his mother, and his 4 brothers. And I'm pretty sure there's a textual note on that, right?
Yeah, it says here Simon placed a row of 7 pyramids alongside, there's a Greek word, katenanti, rather than opposite one another, as in the NRSV, verse 28.
Yeah, so depending on the translation, it's either next to or across from each other. For the pyramids, he contrived an elaborate setting. He surrounded them with massive pillars on which he placed full suits of armor as a perpetual memorial. Besides the full suits of armor, there were carved ships intended to be seen by all who sailed the sea. This tomb, which he erected in Modin, still exists today. Not anymore.
I don't think so.
Not anymore.
No, not anymore. But it did exist.
It did exist.
Yeah, that is historically true.
Turning his treachery against the very young King Antiochus, Tryphon killed him and became king in his place, assuming the diadem of Asia. And of course, Asia is referring not to Asia that we refer to now, but it is referring to the eastern section. I think there should be a note on that. On what Asia is referring
It's Rome.
It's Eurasia, basically, right?
Well, it wouldn't be Eurasia. No.
Not
'cause-
quite. You know, it's
Mediterranean.
a general region east of the Mediterranean. Right?
Sure, yeah.
Asia
I just
Minor.
thought they might have something more specific
didn't-
there. It's not Asia Minor.
There's nothing in here.
Anatolia.
Yeah, but it's not Asia Minor either. Asia Minor is like Turkey.
That's different too, yeah.
So I'm pretty sure it's not that.
Asia refers to the Seleucid Empire.
The Seleucid Empire, okay. So I don't even know.
Oh, hold on. The last coins of Antiochus are dated 142/41, which seems to be closest to the time of First Maccabees. Well, I mean, this is for... What verse are you on?
Oh, I have just finished 32.
Oh, okay. Other ancient authorities, however, date Antiochus's murder to 139 BCE.
Mm-hmm.
Trypho assumed the title Autocrator and dated his coins not by the Seleucid era, but by his own regnal years. Since Trypho was not descended from the Seleucids, he wanted to show his break with Seleucid tradition. His accession to the throne increased the chaos in the Seleucid realm. Asia refers to the Seleucid Empire.
Okay. His rule was a disaster for his land. Simon built up the fortifications of Judea, constructing circuits with lofty towers and big walls and gates and bars. He placed stores of food in the fortresses. Simon appointed a delegation and sent it to King Demetrius to ask that the country be made tax exempt because all Tryphon's exactions were acts of robbery. Demetrius sent a written reply agreeing to these requests. His letter was as follows, and of course we had a lot of these kinds of exemptions and a lot of benefits under was it under Jonathan, I think?
Well, there was an offer, right? But he didn't.
Oh,
take it.
right.
He
That's
went
right.
with
Stupidly long offer that was probably fake.
Yeah, that's right.
But
So Jonathan was a lot smarter than Simon.
yeah,
Yeah.
Demetrius.
Yeah, Simon's just making pyramids.
Well,
and
it was
shit.
also a previous Demetrius.
Well, yeah, sure. It was a different person
Is
altogether.
this the third
I think.
now?
This is the second.
This is the second.
Uh,
He was young before, right?
Yeah, he was young before.
So he's been reigning.
That is how time works. Yes.
well, I mean, how long has he been
was
reigning
young
now?
before.
In the previous story, how old is he now? Do you think?
I have no idea.
Well, he's not a kid anymore. Let's just say that.
As before, Demetrius II shows a willingness to use tax concessions to win friends. He was, in fact, not in control of the southern part of his empire, and so could afford to be generous.
King Demetrius to Simon, high priest and friend of kings, and to the elders and nation of the Jews, greeting. We have received the golden crown and palm branch which you sent, and we are ready to declare a full state of peace with you and to write our officials to grant you exemptions. Our past decrees made in your favor stand. The fortresses which you have built shall be yours. We pardon your errors and violations committed down to the present date. We excuse you from the crown payment which you owed. If any other impost was formerly collected in Jerusalem, it shall no longer be collected. If any of you are qualified to be enrolled in our service, let them be enrolled. Let there be peace between us. So anyways,
I feel like you're mimicking
so
a friend
there-
of ours.
There's a little bit of
You know, the high-pitched
commentary
fat
here.
one?
oh, no, I wasn't actually.
It just sounds...
But thanks.
The grants referred to here are perhaps the three districts transferred to Judea. The strongholds were probably at Joppa, Beth Zor, Adida, and elsewhere, and Demetrius was in no position to recapture them.
The thing is, okay, so this isn't even just tax exempt, right? Because Simon asks for it to be tax exempt.
Mhm.
But this is not only tax exempt, they also don't have to worry about any of the crimes they would have committed
Right.
in the past against them.
Right. The crown tax, with other taxes, had already been remitted, but apparently some was outstanding. The final clause apparently welcomed Jewish soldiers to the king's prestigious bodyguard. The release from tribute, the removal of the yoke of the Gentiles, took place in year 170. If crown tax and tribute are identical, the event may be referred to in Megalit Ta'anit, which says that the withdrawal of the crown tax from Judah and Jerusalem was celebrated on 27th ER, i.e. the 21st of May. Year 170 is probably to be reckoned on the basis of a Seleucid Babylonian era, either from spring 312 or spring 311 BC, and so year 170 here dates from either spring 143 or spring 142 BC. Simon actually took control on Jonathan's capture in the autumn of 143 BC, which would be the beginning of the Seleucid Macedonian year, 170, whose era began autumn 312 BC.
So, expanding on that. In the year 170, the yoke of the Gentiles was lifted from Israel, and the people began to write as the dating formula in bills and contracts in the first year under Simon, high priest, commander, and chief of the Jews.
So, although this narrative refers to the first year of Simon, the Seleucid dating system continues to be used.
Yeah. Let's continue, shall we?
Yeah.
At that time, Simon besieged Gazara, surrounding it with camps. He built a movable tower, and by bringing it up against the city, he overwhelmed an enemy tower and took it. The men in the movable tower surged into the town, where panic began to reign. The townspeople, with their wives and children, came up onto the wall with their garments torn and cried out loudly, imploring Simon to grant them a truce. They begged, "Look not to our wickedness in treating us, but to your mercy." Simon came to terms with them and ordered his men to cease hostilities. However, he expelled the people from the city and saw the purification of the buildings in which there were idols. Having accomplished all that, he entered the city singing hymns and praises. What a dick! After removing all impurity from the city, he resettled it with men who observed the Torah. He also improved the fortifications and built himself a residence within. Okay, so this is now a new, not a capital, but like this is a new, very important city now. He took it over, and he makes a truce with them, but only incredibly temporary.
Right. So Gazara, or Gezer, is an important site on the road from Jerusalem to Joppa, which he's just received. Right. Gazara had a good water supply and fertile land, so Simon was able to reward his supporters as well as gain a base for operations in the coastal plain. Archaeologists have uncovered an elaborate system of cisterns in Gaza, suggested to be Jewish ritual bathing pools. But this suggestion is far from certain. A Greek inscription found at Gazara reads, "Says Pampras, may fire pursue Simon's palace." Although the date and exact reference of the inscription are unsure, if dated to Simon's time, this curse might have been written by one of Simon's prisoners of war.
The men of the Acra in Jerusalem were now blocked from leaving it to go out into the country to buy and sell. They suffered grievously from hunger, and a considerable number of them died of starvation. They cried out to Simon for a truce, and he consented, expelling them from the citadel and purifying it of the abominations. That's what you call a truce? I mean, I guess they're letting him out. He is letting them out.
Yeah,
I guess.
Common strategy would be to siege the city until it could no longer, progress, be offensive in any defensive way, like keep them back,
Sure.
but just fend off those trade routes and then starve them out. Starving out is a very common strategy. Works great.
Yeah.
So anyways, he expelled them. Simon's men entered the citadel on the 23rd day of the second month in the year 171. So obviously this is very important. It gives a very specific date.
Right.
I think there should be a note on that, shouldn't there?
What verse is it?
That is 51.
51.
1351. I'll finish the verse while you find it.
Yeah.
In the year 171, with utterances of praise and palm branches, and to the music of lyres and cymbals and lutes and hymns and songs, because a great enemy had been smashed and driven out of Israel. So I just see him walking into these cities, taking over, and then dancing his way in, just gloating about how great he is. That's what I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, there's nothing in here on that.
Huh. Weird. Okay.
Oddly enough.
He decreed that the day be observed annually with rejoicing. He also improved the fortifications of the Temple Mount running along the Acra and began to dwell there himself with his retinue, observing that his son John had received maturity.
Oh, hold on. It was June 142 or 141, depending on whether one counts early from spring 312 or 311 BC.
Ah, okay.
And it was to be celebrated annually. The date is listed in the Megalatanit. So,
Great.
Okay.
Annual celebration.
yep, annual celebration.
Observing that his son John had reached maturity, Simon appointed him chief of the entire army. John began to reside at Gazara.
Mm.
And honestly, I think that's it. But also, it's important to note here, our author takes care to indicate at the first opportunity the distinction of Simon's legitimate successor, John Hyrcanus, the father of Alexander Aeneas.
Mm.
All right, well, that's the end of that chapter.
Yep,
And
and
that's-
that's the show.
Yeah, that's the end of our reading for the day. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the show. I know it wasn't like super long. It's
It was an hour 5, not terrible
It's-
at all.
Yeah, it's not very short either. So here you should put this over there.
Yeah.
So I hope you guys are ready for next week because that's going to be much longer.
Yeah, but only after Sunday. We only have 6 more weeks of doing Psalms on Atheist Sunday School.
Well, okay, so
and
after
next week, we are finishing First Maccabees.
yes, next week we are finishing First Maccabees. Because I think chapter 14 is pretty long, so that's why I was trying to decide what cutoff point we should have.
And of course, you had to make it so that I was the one reading the longest chapter.
Yep.
You would have also been reading the longest chapter today if we did it.
Oof.
So like, go fuck
There's
yourself.
no winning, dude. You have to read the long chapters.
Either way, thanks everyone for joining us. And
Oh, there will be more Trade Route War books. Second Maccabees.
so we're just gonna cover the same story again, but we have a much better commentary. I think we have actually this guy, the guy who wrote this commentary, Duran. He actually is the one who wrote the commentary in the New Interpreter's Bible.
Oh,
Yeah, so we have 2 of his commentaries effectively.
they probably say the same thing.
Yeah, but
roughly.
this one is way more in depth. This one's so much more detailed. It's from Hermenia, so it's just the fucking best.
Excellent. Well, everybody, enjoy your time off.
Like the show if you haven't liked the stream.
Let everyone know that somehow we've managed to continue. We don't know how.
In times of trouble,
There's
we prevail
always Milwaukee Atheists.
because Milwaukee Atheists is on your side.
Yes, let people know
Call today.
that we
You-
are
you
still
can't-
doing our
You
readings.
can't call,
You know,
but-
they
but-
can get the readings here,
Yeah.
even though all the other ones are canceled.
But call
We're
today.
still reading books.
Anyways, thanks everyone for joining us, and we will see you Sunday.
Unless we get shut down.
Unless we get shut down.